I want you to meet a man with humble beginnings and groundbreaking achievements. He is the founder of Ceronix, a United States leading developer and manufacturer of color monitors and circuit boards. He has been living among us here in Auburn, California for many years, and his name is Don Whitaker. Recently, I had the privilege to sit down with Don and was amazed by his life story.
I was born in North Dakota. My mother, she was a teacher. She was my father's high school teacher in North Dakota. And he fell in love with his school teacher and they got married, which is interesting. Probably couldn't do that these days. I had 2 and 3 paper routes when I was in the 5th grade to help the family. Got married, bought a small house for $20,000. Maybe it's $22,000 in Oakland. You know,
those prices,
you know, still
back then.
Still good, but you got to start someplace, you know. Poverty either makes you closer as a family or breaks you apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't go through poverty when I got married, but it was close. I got married, I had $200 in my pocket. And sometimes going through poverty is not a bad thing. You know, and I grew up in Oakland in the hood. I didn't like it. I didn't want to do that again. But still, I couldn't afford to go to college, and I wasn't that smart. I failed many times, you know. Dust yourself up, jump up, and get back at it.
Don has a wide perspective on life, considering he started in poverty, but it is his mindset that moved him forward. Dust yourself up, jump up, and get back at it, as he says, is his way to deal with failure. Here, he shares where he began and how he worked his way out of poverty.
So I got an apprenticeship as a machinist, building mechanical calculating machines. And in 1973, and started a company called Ceronix in Silicon Valley. And we grew to 300 employees, then went public and the stock went up. And then my boss died of a heart attack and no one replaced him, so I was left in charge. You know, be the best you can be, you know, and give every day 110%.
You saw the opportunity and you took that step, which is amazing. I think that in a lot of entrepreneurs,
that's life.
That's wow.
That's life.
Believe it or not, but Don is the man who gave us the colored computer monitor and the touch screen technology that has become part of our lives. Who knew that all this was done in Auburn, California?
Started in my garage at Lake of the Pines, which is Auburn. And this is the interesting story of Ceronix. So here I had this design for the color monitor in my back pocket. They said no one will ever use a color monitor, you know. So we did that for Fortune Coin Company, and we were sole supplier for them for 17 years.
If you ask me, I would say that Ceronix made the iPhone possible. When Apple's stock was at $3.35 per share and on the brink of bankruptcy, Steve Jobs' team visited Auburn, California to meet the man who made a technology which most of us use today. Don, I remember when we were having a tour here, you were telling a story about Steve Jobs and what happened there with can you briefly?
That's another good story. They wanted to improve touch. At the time it was resistive touch. So I thought, let's come up with projected capacitive. I said, how much money are you willing to put up? He said, well, we don't have any money. They were going down. They had just recently, Steve Jobs had come back to Apple. Mm-hmm. He was with Next Computer. He had gone bankrupt there, and Apple was going bankrupt. Their stock was at $3.35 a share. We started in November, right? We were up and running in July, and had touch sensors for the iPhone for the Christmas market in less than a year, because the government wanted it. The government put $30 million up. Mm-hmm. It was a loan. Besides working hard and developing cutting-edge technology, Don also likes to have some fun with it. One of his hobbies is collecting exotic birds, and part of Ceronix property became their sanctuary. Tell us a little bit about where all these birds come from. What's going on here? I thought this was Ceronix here, and now I looked through the window and it looks like a little zoo. That's part of the fun factor.
Hey, buddy. Hey, how are you? How you doing? Do I get a hug today?
How about a hug? Yeah, give me the hug, buddy. Yeah, nice hug here, huh? Yeah, there we go. He's a good boy, huh? Yeah, good guy. No. That's a whooper swan, and then the largest swan in the world.
Not everyone's definition of success is the same. Some would say that Don is successful because of the company he built and through which he became a multi-millionaire. But for Don Whitaker, success is something else, something more meaningful perhaps than business. There are so many different definitions of success. How would you define success? What does success mean to you?
Family, religion, country. It's a tough call for, I probably put family above God, and I'm not sure that's right. I vacillate between God, family, country, family, God, country. A great problem in America is the breakup of the family, and it's being replaced by the government. Marriages, you don't have to tolerate it. If you don't like what's going on, you get a divorce. Then the children, the family suffers, and then you find a decline in the religions in the United States. And I grew up in Oakland in the hood, and all this government assistance didn't help the people. In fact, the people weren't happy. They had no pride. Socialism doesn't work. Going through life, and the government will take care of me if.
Don has worked hard his whole life well into his 80s. A lot of it has to do with the fact that he is having fun running Ceronix. So I asked, what's next for Don? And is retirement somewhere on the horizon? Don, what's next for you?
Maybe retirement coming up. I'll be 81. My wife's pushing hard.
Maybe it's time to think about that, right? Maybe.
Well, at 81, you don't buy any green bananas, right?
Yeah. Well, I haven't heard that one yet, but
I'll be 81 in a couple of months.
You look great for 81.
But at 81, how long is that going to last, right? So you need to be thinking of
course,
a transition and what's best for the company and employees, and take care of them.
And it looks like you have been taking care of.
That's what we do.
Don, thank you so much for doing this.
Anything
I really,
for you,
really
Paul.
Appreciate it.
One of the good guys. There you go.
I have met a lot of people here in Auburn, and those who know you, they love you. You inspire a lot of people. If you could please give us a little bit of your background, your story, where you grew up, who's Don Whitaker?
It's pretty amazing. My life story, I go, wow. I was born in North Dakota, in Dunn Center, a town of 350. 1942, right? The war was just getting started, World War II. And my father was drafted and came out to California, and had a $15,000 house we bought there, and it was in the hood of Oakland, which was a rough neighborhood.
Yeah.
I had 2 and 3 paper routes when I was in the 5th grade to help the family survive. And my mother, she was a teacher. She was my father's high school teacher in North Dakota.
Oh, wow.
That's another thing, right? So it's North Dakota.
Interesting story.
She's a couple of years older than my dad. And he fell in love with his school teacher, and they got married, which is interesting. Probably couldn't do that these days.
Yeah.
But they'd been married, I think they were married 55 years, and had a brother 4 years younger, but he was a little young when all this happened.
Oh yeah.
And he helped too. He's the smart one of the family. But he didn't really go through the poverty, because it was 4 years later after my dad started another business and did a little better. But still, I couldn't afford to go to college, and I wasn't that smart. So I got an apprenticeship as a machinist, building mechanical calculating machines.
How did you get in there?
I took a machine shop course at Laney Trade, and I kind of liked it. And the professor knew of this job at Marchant Calculators, building mechanical calculating machines. So I started there, and be the best you can be, and give every day 110%. One guy would run 1 machines. Well, I felt I could run 2 machines and triple my output.
And so how old were you then when you were doing this?
I was 20 years old.
20 years.
Maybe even late 18, early 19.
Okay.
And started as an apprentice and running production machines, high volume. Then they had an opportunity to be a tool and die maker. So the shop steward recommended me become a tool and die maker. So I became a tool and die maker, got married, bought a small house for $20,000. Maybe it's $22,000 in Oakland. You know,
Those prices
still
back then.
still good, but you got to start someplace. In 1963, Marchand Calculators mentioned they were going out of business due to electronics. So the same professor I'd taken a couple courses from at Laney Trade knew of an opening at Lawrence Radiation Laboratory, building a nuclear ramjet engine. So I got into that and was there 10 years, and then was in charge of all the projects on the University of California, Berkeley campus that was sponsored by the federal government. And in 1973, and started a company called Quebex in Silicon Valley. And we grew to 300 employees, and then went public and the stock went up. And then my boss died of a heart attack and no one replaced him, so I was left in charge.
Oh, wow. So you were thrown into the fire.
And they said, could you do it? I said, sure, I can do that, Give it 110% every day and be the best she can be, in life, in marriage, and all of that. It all comes together. And you develop as a person as you grow,
For sure, yeah.
And sometimes going through poverty is not a bad thing. I didn't like it. I didn't want to do that again.
It does something to your character. You develop certain strengths, perspective, right? Like all these things, and then it influences you to look at situations, life differently.
And I think that helped me to be really close with family and care about family. Because poverty either makes you closer as a family or breaks you apart. And I didn't go through poverty when I got married, but it was close. I got married, I had $200 in my pocket, really with no college education, and barely graduated from high school because I was working 3 jobs during high school. So
wow,
I got by, but I wasn't that smart, But it's practical experiences you learn through life, and that guides you,
It's interesting that whenever I hear someone successful talk about their journey, their entrepreneur journey, usually they do say things like, well, I wasn't the smartest in the class, and it's not, sometimes success is not about being super smart.
I think it takes something else. One, worth ethics. And it's hard to find employees that really will dedicate themselves and care. They don't really want to commit to anything in life. Your family, jobs, they're just kind of going day by day, and they're not saving for the future. They're not looking at, they're just kind of going through life, and the government will take care of me if,
It's a problem these days.
It's a big problem. And some of the problem, they don't have the family ties. And to me, that's a great problem in America, is the breakup of the family. And it's being replaced by the government. I have a wonderful employee. We just gave her a big raise. And she says, well, no, I'm not going to be able to get my government assistance.
Well, I find, especially right now, like in these younger generation, like what you just said, what you just mentioned, I find it more and more frequently. What do you think causes that?
I think it kind of starts with the family. Our family culture, we're so affluent, marriages, you don't have to tolerate it. If you don't like what's going on, you get a divorce, move on to someone else, because you can afford to do that. When you're in poverty, you kind of have to work together, as a family. Not always, and a lot of that comes from the affluence we've achieved in America, and the opportunity, and the freedoms. You know, you can be anything. If you don't like your marriage, get rid of that one, get another one. Then the children, the family suffers, and then you find a decline in the religions in the United States. And, you know, they feel, oh, my parents will take care of me. If they don't, maybe grandpa will, or maybe the government assistance, you know. It's pretty easy to get these days, you know.
Sure.
And we just went through COVID. People were used to living on government subsistence. You know, and I grew up in Oakland in the hood, and all this government assistance didn't help the people. In fact, the people weren't happy. They had no pride. They were living off the government and welfare. Third and fourth generations that had never worked and didn't really even consider working because you could live off of welfare. Why get married? Let's have 4, 5, 7 kids. You can live pretty well. Well, and then no family. The women that have 4 or 5 different boyfriends and kids by different boyfriends. That's still going on.
Yeah.
I don't think, because there's no family, the men have no responsibility. They have no father. You know, that's a problem.
I remember when we came here from Ukraine, we did get some assistance from the very beginning. And we lived in a very small house. And I remember my parents, they were buying stuff at the grocery store, packing it in boxes, and sending it over to the people in Ukraine. While we're living only like 2 or 3 months in America, living in a small house, 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom. My parents already had 10 kids. So there's 10 of us, there's our parents. And they're already packing things. And then my dad had went to work after a few months. He didn't know English, but he just started getting $6 an hour doing floors. And and then saved enough money to buy a van, saved enough money to go and buy a house. And it's like there was no assistance after that. Once he started going to work, all of the welfare and everything
was America. That's America. That's what it should be for people. But you need the incentive to do that. Why not just live off the assistance you were getting? A lot of people do that. That's a danger. And that's what I don't like what I'm seeing. Socialism doesn't work. You need an incentive to take risks, to give it on. I've failed many times. You know, dust yourself up, jump up and get back at it. You'll see some very bright people came out of struggling families.
Oh, yeah.
Because they've had to work hard. You know, you're from Ukraine. What the Ukraine people are doing, amazing, you know, but very tight family ties there. Also religion.
Yes.
You know, religion helps those family ties and draws you closer together and teach you guidelines for life.
So we're sitting here in this beautiful Ceronix facility. It's amazing how the way you guys designed and built this property. Can you tell us a brief story about how did Ceronix start? How did you start Ceronix?
Well, so when I sold my stock out of Quebec, I was pretty well off now. But in 1979, we moved up to Lake of the Pines. Lived on this beautiful 5-mile private lake, had a guarded community. My girls grew up there, got a place at Squaw Valley for snow skiing, and you know, life was good. And then we went on this trip
Las Vegas.
To Las Vegas, and I saw the new video poker. And I got the name on the side of the machine and looked up the company, and he was in Las Vegas, Fortune Coin Company. So I called him up and said, gee, I really like your video poker. I have a design for a color monitor. Would you be interested? He said, you betcha. Computer monitors and everything were monochrome, one color. You could have a green phosphor or sometimes yellow, but only one color. You had color televisions, but because of the resolution available, color television run on what was called an NTSC signal. So if you try to use it for a static image, like on a computer monitor, it flickers. A moving image is okay, but a static image, it wouldn't work. Your eye strain would be terrible. So I worked with an engineer to modify a Sony Trinitron television into a color monitor. So we worked on a design, our own design, for a digital color monitor, and had pretty much finished it. And CICS went public, and it was bought out by Perkin-Elmer, and they said no one will ever use a color monitor. So, and this is the interesting story of Ceronix. So here I had this design for the color monitor in my back pocket, and Fritz Ham, who was the engineer I worked with, his parents lived in Auburn.
Okay.
And so I knew about Auburn and liked it in Lake of the Pines. Started in my garage at Lake of the Pines, which is Auburn.
Let's talk a little bit about this point here where you said you looked at the site to find out what the company that made these machines, and you made a decision to call. Like, I think that part right there is really important, because very often somebody has an idea, opportunity comes, and very often people don't act on it. They don't take that action. That they, some like thought would come to someone like, who am I to call somebody? I mean, these guys are probably gonna just ignore me or hang up on me, right? But you saw the opportunity and you took that step, which is amazing. I think that in a lot of entrepreneurs,
that's life.
Wow.
That's life. You see an opportunity, and I knew there wasn't anyone else doing it, because I'd gone to the shows with CICS and no one else was doing a color monitor. They said, no one will need a color monitor. So we did that for Fortune Coin Company. Jacome and Fortune Coin merged and formed IGT, the largest gaming company in the world. They were around billions of dollars a year. And we were sole supplier for them for 17 years. Another company comes to me and said, gee, we're building a computer, and it's a personal computer, but the first real one, IBM, right? Mm-hmm. And said, we're interested maybe in a color monitor. And there was a group in Boca Raton, Florida. So I flew down, spent a week with them, and the people said, well, we're not designing it for a color monitor. No one would ever use that. It's a personal computer, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to have the kids play a game on the television. He said, how'd you know that? I said, it's obvious.
Wow.
It's a personal computer. Why wouldn't you play games? Kids love games. You got a personal computer, do your computing. Now your kids can play games on it. Why not? I said, give me 3 wires out, red, green, and blue, and I'll give you an RGB color monitor, and we'll call that CGA because it's half the resolution of a television set.
Don't you have to somehow protect this idea? I mean, there's people out there that are looking to maybe...
Yes, but the key there was somehow. Patents only work with honest people and honest companies. Well, in the video monitor business, you're dealing with the Chinese, the Koreans, Taiwanese, and they have a philosophy, why design it? It's easier just to copy. So if you get a patent, they can go to the patent office, get a complete copy of your patent for $20 and copy it. I mean, look around you.
Yeah.
Look what we're wearing. Everything's been a copy. And so patents, I don't believe, are effective. So what we did early on with the development, we developed a custom XR chip. And it's a custom chip that costs $200,000. So in this chip is all these circuits, the microprocessor and everything required that's the heart of the monitor. And it's a custom chip that we licensed XR to build for us. So do a custom chip, put all your technology and then encrypt your software that's driving it so no one can copy it. They've tried for 40 years. No one's copied it yet. Patents work in the United States, but you have to look at your market. And if your market's international, especially if the Chinese are your competitor, good luck with patents. Now you just tell them what you've done. Is that stupid? And it costs you $50,000 to get a good patent.
There are so many different definitions of success. Some people define success as having $1 million. Some people define success as having a loving family,
Sure.
that you are around with, and some others define success as becoming famous and popular, well known. How would you define success? What does success mean to you?
All of the above. I wouldn't say being famous, but being popular, being well liked, be the best you can be. Family, religion, country. It's a tough call for, I probably put family above God. And I'm not sure that's right. I vacillate between God, family, country, family, God, country. And by country, I mean Auburn, California, United States. Where are your loyalties in life? Where's your focus? And your friends? Try to be the best you can be to people, to help them. Like I just brought my workers, supervisors, a cup of tea. Just be nice.
When you said this about God and family, it reminds me of, in our Ukrainian Slavic culture, sometimes men go, let's say they belong to a local congregation, church.
Sure.
And very often those who want to serve in that church, they have such a passion to do that they are always in the church and leave the family behind, because that for them has become the most important thing. So when you say that, I know what you mean, because what happened to many of these men who have left, because to them that service, that is God's work, it's so much more important. And then you look at their family, their children, not so good.
I don't think that's, if you're a bachelor and you commit yourself to religion, to Christ, that's you're doing a personal thing.
Don, I remember when we were having a tour here, you were telling a story about Steve Jobs and what happened there with can you briefly?
That's another good story. So we're building video poker machines, lottery machines. Well, they wanted to improve touch. At the time, it was resistive touch, which is 2 Mylar films with an optically clear conductive coating called Indian tin oxide. Well, it didn't hold up real well, especially with lottery machines or where you're hitting it hundreds of times. And so they needed a new improved form. So I worked to help design capacitive touch. So your body's capacitance is 2,000 picofarads, and we're measuring that with capacitive touch. And originally it was surface capacitive, which we used. And that's one coating with sensors in the 4 corners. And by triangulation, we could tell pretty accurately where your finger was. Single touch. And that's what we came out with in 1986, 86, 87. And worked very well. That took over all of the lottery and the gambling market, because resistive wouldn't hold up. And then even into automotive and some computers a little. But it was only single touch. So we said, So I thought, let's come up with projected capacitive. And that's where you have the conductive coating underneath a cover glass, and you have a grid, and that's an XY grid. So rather than 4 contacts, we now have 60. The concept was very valid, but our software and firmware wasn't real good. But we showed it at the Global Gaming Show in Las Vegas. And a group comes up and says, gee, we've heard you do surface capacitive. I said, yeah, that's been reliable. Well, we're coming out with a new product, and we're looking more at this new touch you have, projected capacitive. I said, yeah, it's a great one. It's not quite ready for production. He said, well, we're doing a new product. So then they come and visit us up here, and
at this
location. And they come in and say, well, we're coming out with this new iPhone. I said, oh, that sounds interesting. Gee, no one's ever done that. Okay. I said, how much money are you willing to put up? He said, well, we don't have any money. They were going down. They had just Recently, Steve Jobs had come back to Apple. He was with Next Computer. He had gone bankrupt there. And Apple was going bankrupt. Their stock was at $3.35 a share.
Yep.
And I said, well, you know, to do what you're going to do is going to take a lot of money. And the quantities you're talking of, so I met with Michael Chan, my good friend in Taiwan. So he goes out and he gets a loan for $30 million from the Chinese government. And I take my architect that built this building over to China, and we start building the buildings. We started in November, right? We were up and running in July and had touch sensors for the iPhone for the Christmas market in less than a year. I could never do that in the United States because the government wanted it. The government put $30 million up. It was a loan, paid every dime back. Also a 5-year moratorium on taxes.
Wow.
And we got some Apple stock too, their share.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
A lot of stock.
Yeah.
Which was worthless. That turned out pretty good too.
Oh, yeah. Tell us a little bit about where all these birds come from. What's going on here? I thought this was Ceronix here, and now I looked through the window and it looks like a little zoo.
That's part of the fun factor. So Ceronix is built not just as a place to work, but as a place to enjoy and for the community to enjoy. I wanted to have nice landscaping. So Ceronix in 1999 was the largest commercial solar installation in the United States.
Yeah.
So ever since we've been having free power. It puts out 480,000 watts, just under a megawatt, half a megawatt. Since we have all that solar, we put in a well, and we hit a 110 gallon per minute well.
Oh, wow.
So we have free water. So I designed a pond out front, and we had this pond to irrigate from the pond. Well, then we got this well. I really didn't need the pond. So I got the pond, and we're irrigating from the pond or the well, either one worked. And my freight forwarder comes and he delivers. And he said, "Oh, gee, you've got a nice pond. Have you thought of putting any koi in your pond?" I said, "Oh, that could be fun." He said, "I've got some in the back of my truck." He said, I hear they eat bugs in the water." He said, "Yeah, they love, mosquito larvae and bugs, and they'll clean up your pond." I said, "Oh, great." And they also, eat algae. So I said, "How much is it?" He said, $3,000. I said, "Well, how many koi do you have?" He said, 1,500. I said, 1,500? He said, "Well, this guy, the top importer and wholesale distributor for all of Northern California, went over to Japan, handpicked all these koi, paid for them in January and February, and then they drain the mud ponds and harvest them in like early May, late May, and ship them over." So shipped them over, and the freight forwarder picks them up to ship. Well, he goes to deliver them. The guy's bankrupt. No one knows where he is. And he says, "I've had these in the back of my truck for a week." I said, "Well, I don't need 1,500. How about if I give you $1,000, for 500? He said, "Oh, okay." So we started putting him. Well, they've been in this bag for 2 weeks. They had oxygen tablets, but the tablets were gone. And some of them we'd had to resuscitate, get them going. I said, "Boy, it's Friday. You better get some oxygen to them, or you're going to have a bunch of dead fish on Monday." He said, "I don't want dead fish. I'll give you all of them." So now we've got koi. Had that. Well, then Chapaday had their health center on Atwood, okay? The Indian Health Center. And Indians come up and they say, "Gee, the county is merging our health center with the county's health center. And they say we can't have the birds we've been raising." They had 15 peacocks, 14, 15. So now we've got peacocks, right? So I thought, well, that's kind of cool. And they go all over the industrial park. And so I put in automatic feeders for them. So then Doug Van Hout's my neighbor across the street. So we went to Africa with him. And the chicken of Africa is the guinea fowl. And they're running all over Africa. That's their chicken, right? I said, "That's kind of cool. I'll get 20 guinea fowl chicks." They were $5 a piece. So I bought them from a breeder in And then, I looked, there's an ad in the Auburn Journal, how a gentleman, Gary, who owns Animals Incorporated, was raising and selling exotic birds at Auburn Valley Country Club. And he was violating the CC&Rs. He was running a business out of his house and had quite a few exotic birds. And on the front is, in fact, there it is. That's the crowned crane. The front of the Auburn Journal is a picture of the crowned crane. So I call him up. I said, gee, I kind of like that bird. We've got some guinea fowl. And he said, well, I got to get rid of all my birds. And I said, well, I've got an area for them. And then we can do a working arrangement for, I'll work with you, we'll upgrade, we'll give you the babies, I'll buy the food from you, and we have a working relation where I can help you in your breeding and raising, and you can sell them, because you can certainly sell them, and I've got a breeder's license, and you help me raise and breed the birds. And that's Gary at Animals Incorporated, and we're still doing that.
Okay, so Don, the last question that we kind of stopped on is, if someone is thinking about starting a business, they're entrepreneur in spirit, they don't want to go and just get a regular job. For those people, what would you tell them? What kind of advice would you give them? Or maybe someone who has started something and maybe it didn't really work out and they're thinking, this is not for me.
Believe in yourself. And I bootstrapped the company. I didn't bring in any outside investors, which is generally you bring in outside investors, they want a piece of you, and now they're looking at a return on their investment. If you really just analyze it, make sure it's the right decisions, see if a family can help you, friend, maybe, and you can also rely on venture capital. That's what Mark does a lot. That helps, but try to maintain control of the company to do it your way. Not always perfect, and it's a learning curve through life. Life is a road, a trail. Sometimes there's little crooks in the road. But it all works. Believe in yourself. Be the best you can be.
Don, what's next for you?
Well, we recently have a nice 5,500 square foot condo in Naples, Florida. My wife loves that. I've always enjoyed boating and to get out, and I'm an admiral in the Naples Yacht Club, and have a nice berth there. So a fun thing. Maybe retirement coming up. I'll be 81. My wife's pushing hard.
Maybe it's time to think about that, right? Maybe.
Well, at 81, you don't buy any green bananas, right?
Well, I haven't heard that one yet, but
I'll be 81 in a couple months.
You look great for 81.
But at 81, how long is that going to last, right? So you need to be thinking of
course,
a transition and what's best for the company and employees, and take care of them.
And it looks like you have been taking care of.
That's what we do.
That's awesome.
That's life.
Don, thank you so much.
Hey, Paul, you're one of the good guys, man.
I appreciate it.
Best to you.